The level of cognitive dissonance among podcast bros just baffles me. I just don't understand how you can say this.
What keeps you living the longest are the number of relationships that you've got. More than stopping smoking, more than going to the gym, more than changing your diet. The single biggest predictor is how many close friends you've got.
Doesn't that mean instead of focusing on, let's say, optimizing going to the gym or not drinking or no caffeine, we should optimize instead on friendships and relationships?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm totally on board with that.
And then in the same breath, turn around and say this.
Isn't it interesting that there's a lot of content on the internet at the moment about dating, mating dynamics and stuff? Almost no one ever talks about love. Who's going to tell women the equal access to opportunity that you have recently just acquired? Actually, what that's doing is it's making it more difficult for you to find a mate that you're fundamentally attracted to.
Yeah.
For people who seem to be driven by data all the time, these people don't really understand how women's lives work. We get way more out of our friendships than we get out of romantic relationships, which is why women are deciding that those are the relationships that are more worth pouring into, because they actually give us the satisfaction, support that leads to our longevity. They actually give us what we need, whereas heterosexual romantic relationships with men don't. They actually suck valuable energy out of our lives, and not only do they not put that energy back, but they don't give anything additional either. And this is really at the root of the, oh, you're gonna die alone single with cats, because they think we're like them. They think that our most valuable interpersonal connection is a romantic/sexual one. And it's not. Our friends do way more for us than they do. Our platonic relationships have much more utility than our romantic ones do, which is why I think in Decentering Men, decentering romance is an important part of that, and focusing on our friendships and making those stronger. I think that will lead to a better, happier life. And it's not that women suddenly turned around and said, men have no value. It's that women have realized that men's value is overinflated. More specifically, men's value as life partners has been artificially overinflated. I'll let YV Edit explain a little bit of that more.
About the forceful withholding of women's human rights away from them. There's nothing in our society that is dependent on men marrying women. But there is a lot at stake for women marrying men. You know how you know that? It's because the government is getting involved. Because our rights are getting removed from us again. Because a lot of things in our society rest on the laurels of women's unpaid labor. Do you understand that? Women have been going on strike and withholding that labor. And that labor is so valuable that not only are men getting their panties in a bunch about it, but the government is getting involved. And they're reversing our rights to our own bodies and to our own freedom and our own safety. You bring nothing to the table by default. Nothing. Oh, you perceive your own value to be so high while not realizing that your value is artificial. It's been given to you. Only ever brought money to the table, which a woman is forced to sit because it's her only way to get money. And you know what? Now that women don't have to do the table thing, they can just go to the same place that you go and get their own money. They don't want to come to the table with you. The only time you have ever brought something to a woman's table is by taking it away first from her, by withholding her access to necessities and things that she would need to survive. So what are you going to withhold? The only thing that men typically bring to the table are their needs and wants. What women can bring to a man's table, those things are priceless. That's why y'all literally had to trap us before, and you have to trap us still, because you refuse to value the actual worth of our labor and contributions. Whereas that same thing is not happening to you, because you don't contribute anything. You come and you take, you receive. It's actually the women who give.
So telling us we should be more relationship-centered, more romantic relationship-centered, because it'll make us happier, but in the same breath saying the most important thing for our happiness and longevity is relationships, plural, i.e. friendships, particularly as you get older and your spouses or partners die. We know that those relationships those studies are talking about are friendships. not romantic relationships. So you recognize that, and then in the same breath, you're still trying to push women towards heterosexual, heteronormative relationships that produce children. So when I hear that from you, when I hear that cognitive dissonance, when you say, oh, I'm not a conservative, I'm not in favor of Handmaid's Tale, I'm not in favor of rolling back women's progress, when you say that, I don't believe you. Because you're still insisting that women continue to function in an old system, a system that we've told you a million times doesn't work. We're over here talking about changing the system and making it work better for everyone. Meanwhile, you're over there saying, oh no, it's not the system that's the problem. It's that we've introduced all these things like the internet, online dating, and mass consumption, and it's distracting us from participating better in the old system. It's not the system, it's the technology. It's all these technological advances that are distracting us and ruining our brains and making us not function in patriarchy as well as we otherwise could have. You see the problem with that? So when I hear men like this who don't claim to be conservatives, don't claim to be misogynistic, but the principles and the things they're talking about and the way they identify the problems, they're doing it in the same way conservatives do, they're still conservatives to me. Because you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Your suggestions for fixing the problem are not going to help us. Your solutions are going to set us back. Because at the end of the day, you're still asking us to shrink ourselves. Women, you're so successful and so great, you're graduating college, you have these great careers, and you're vying for these same 20% of men. You're not going to get one of those, right? So you have to do X, Y, Z. You have to reprioritize romance. You have to deprioritize all the other things in your life that you've spent all kinds of time, money, and energy achieving that are important to you. No, you have to deprioritize all that stuff, and you have to prioritize heteronormativity, marriage, and children. How are you different from a conservative when you're saying that? And if that doesn't work, and the population alarmist that you are gets really panicked 20, 30 years from now, what's your next solution going to be? Changing the system? No. You're going to be so panicked, so terrified that you're going to lump right in with the other conservatives and you're going to roll back women's rights further and further. Because for all you're claiming about how rolling back women's rights isn't the solution, I don't really hear you coming to the defense of our rights. I don't really hear men like this that claim to believe what they believe fighting for our rights side by side us. Y'all have been totally absent from that conversation. So forgive me if when you start talking about all this stuff, I think that you're full of shit. Because you are.